I got what I was entitled to. Now, neither of us got what we felt entitled to. Each of us feels we got 5 too little of the surplus. I think I paid you 5 too much. You think I should have paid you 5 more. Okay, so the way the model works is that you take the amount that each person is aggrieved. So the aggrievement is defined by what you thought you should have got minus what you got. Okay, so we're each aggrieved by 5 monetary units, Turkish lira. And then I cut back on consummate performance. I call this shading. Shading means that I don't deliver quite the quality I could. I cut back to the point where your payoff falls by 5 times theta, where theta is some constant which we just take to be exogenous. It's between 0 and 1. It might be 0.2. So let me say, for those of you who like models where everything is derived from first principles, this is not such a model. There are quite a few things which we just assume here. We assume that this is the way that people behave. If you're aggrieved by a certain amount, you punish the other person by that amount times theta. Remember, as you punish them, you're not gaining yourself because of my assumption that you're sort of indifferent. So as you're less polite to my guests, it doesn't help you. Your utility stays constant, approximately constant. I'm going to assume exactly constant. But I'm hurting quite a bit. And you're sort of surgical about it. You just cut back to the point where I suffer by the amount you were aggrieved times theta. It's just a kind of mechanical way the model works. Now, it's symmetric, so I'm also shading, I'm also cutting back on the nice treatment I give to you to the point where your payoff also falls by 5 theta. So we're each doing this, we're each sort of punishing the other, which means that at the end of the day, there's a total deadweight loss of 10 theta. Okay? If theta is 0.2, then we've destroyed 20% of the value, which means 2. And we're left with 8. Remember, where does the 10 come from? It's 20 minus 10. Sorry, there are 2 10s there. But the surplus from the transaction, which is the way economists measure the value of transactions, my value minus your cost is 10. So in an ideal world, we would be getting 10 from this. But because we're punishing each other, because we feel aggrieved, 20% of that is lost down the drain, and we end up with 8 instead of 10.
We are not responding to the other's punishment.
No, exactly right. You could consider that, but we think of it as a simultaneous move game. So it's too late then. Okay? I'm aggrieved, I punish me, you're aggrieved, you punish me, it's simultaneous, and that's it. There's no second round. Okay, so any other, this is actually not such a large, LSC I couldn't have had any questions because I was miles away from anybody, but if somebody has a clarifying question, I'd be happy to answer it.
Are you going to discuss the case where the price is paid after the performance? So what if I pay the singer after the hopping is over? And maybe there's tipping involved.
I'm not going to discuss it, although it would be an excellent thing to discuss. It's discussed in the paper why I don't think that's a perfect, why we don't think that's a perfect solution to the problem. But can I not discuss it today? It's a perfectly reasonable thing to say, but I think just to say, I think tipping is a rather crude way. Most of the time people seem to tip approximately the same whatever happens, a little bit more, a little bit less. So I think it's a bad, and then of course, the point is that you don't really understand tipping, why people do it. They can also punish somebody at the, regardless of their performance. But let me refer you to the paper for a discussion of that. Okay, so the point is that at the end of this all, there's been a deadweight loss. And the question is, economists, when they see a deadweight loss, they think, wait a minute, can't we do something about it? And actually, no one really likes them. better to get rid of them if you can. Is there a way to avoid this deadweight loss? And the answer is there's a very simple way, okay, which is to put the price in the contract from the beginning. So remember, we have this competitive market at date 0, and let's suppose that there are lots of singers and there's only one person having a musical evening, just to make it simple. It doesn't have to be, that's not important. So in that case, there are lots of other singers competing with you, and your bid price down, imagine we have an auction or something, they'll compete until the price falls to their cost. Okay, this is the standard economics. So I could get a singer for 10 at date 0. So suppose I do that. I hire you, and we agree on a price of 10.1, say, I'm generous. That's more than you can get elsewhere. And there are lots of other people willing to replace you. Now, then what we do is we just put in the contract, I'll pay you 10.1. Let me forget it. I'll pay you 10. Now, then the idea is, if you go along with the assumptions in this Hart-Moore paper, when we get to date 1, we look at the contract and we see that it specifies the price. And therefore, since, this is all an assumption of course, since contracts are reference points for entitlements, we don't expect anything outside the contract. And since the contract says what the price is, both of us have the same expectation or feeling of entitlement. And so we both agree that 10.1 is the right and reasonable price, because that's what we negotiated in a competitive market 6 months before. So there is a very important implicit assumption here, which is that competitive market legitimizes the price. That basically, when I hired you as a singer, there was a market price for singers, which was 10, and you willingly accepted that price. And then later on, you feel that was a reasonable price because it was negotiated in a fair way. Competition sort of makes things fair. So that's what we're implicitly assuming here. And that means that when we get to date 1, as I say, there's nothing to argue about, nothing to be aggrieved about. We both get exactly what we feel entitled to, what the contract said we would get. And so we're both willing to be nice to each other and provide consummate performance. So basically, okay, there are a lot of assumptions here. But not much distance between the assumptions and the result. But the point is, what I'd like to convince you as you think about this when you leave the lecture, that these assumptions actually may be sort of roughly right. That maybe this is the way people think. And that the difference between a contract where the price is specified and one where it isn't specified is that if it's specified, we just don't, there's no sort of bad feeling. But if the price isn't specified, maybe we're going to get into an argument later on about what the price should be. And the competitive market is no longer there that provides a guide to us as to what the price should be. And so one of us or both of us can feel a little unhappy and not in the mood to provide very good service, exemplary service to the other party. Okay, basically the role of a contract here is to get us on the same page in terms of what we think should happen. So this is something which I think is very natural, and even lawyers have been quite sympathetic to this idea of this is what a contract is about. But it's not what you find in the literature. Okay, people haven't really looked at this role of contracts. Okay, just for people here who know a lot about the Coase theorem, let me just say that you cannot solve this problem by Coasean bargaining, because the whole point is that if I try to, I'm being now a little technical, that because shading is non-contractable, you cannot write a contract where I say, I'll pay you more not to shade, because it's not enforceable. Shading is a matter of how you feel. And in fact, if I pay you more, it's true, you'll feel better because you'll feel less aggrieved. But I will feel more aggrieved. I'll feel worse because I paid you more and I'll shade more. So actually, that's not a solution. The solution is to put the price into the contract. Okay. Now, we're almost where we want to be. We haven't got a theory of the firm yet, but I'm now going to introduce one more feature which will give us a theory of the firm. Let me just ask, when would you like me to finish? As of course I said, I'm not as quick as I I have up to 4. So, okay, well that's certainly no. Okay, so the final step to get to the cosing question of why we sometimes do transactions inside firms and sometimes between firms is that I'm going to introduce the, I think, realistic idea that in practice you don't know exactly how the musical evening should proceed at date 0. So 6 months ahead of time, I don't know exactly what I want from you, okay? We could be talking here about what you should sing, or because maybe that ought to depend on who else I hire to come to the musical evening, and I haven't yet figured that out. Or it may depend on who I invite as friends, you know, exactly what program I want. You may have strong feelings about the program. It may turn out, you know, 3 months from now, you get some sort of recording deal. And so you're going to be making a CD on something, and you would like to practice that. Or maybe, you know, you're totally fed up with a particular thing that you've been singing it too much, and you definitely don't want to sing that. So all these things will become apparent between now and date 1. Now, to make it very simple, I want to assume that there are just two ways of doing business. Okay, obviously, you know, there are many, in practice, there can be many choices. But just to make it very simple, we'll assume that when the moment comes, there are 2 ways of carrying out this evening. And I'm going to call them method 1 and method 2. Okay? So it may be the song you sing. And method 1, okay, but what I want to assume is that we can't describe these methods in advance. It's not that we know method, we'll either do it this way or that way. It's just that when the time comes, there will be a choice of 2 ways to do it. I'm just labeling them method 1 and method 2, but they don't have those labels ahead of time. And okay, what I call method 1, let's suppose, gives me a value of 20 and yield a cost of 10. Okay, these are familiar numbers. The other way of doing the musical evening would give me a lower value, 14,